All right. Record. All right. So good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. My name is Meg Monahan, or Meg Alexander. God, I keep forgetting my last name. I'm part of the marketing team here at Power to Fly, and I am super excited to get started today and introduce you to our guest speaker and start diving in on this subject. Before we do that, I do want to go over a couple real quick housekeeping items for everybody. First things first is that all of our events are all about our participants and our attendees. So we definitely want you all to feel totally free to participate. Please feel free to turn your cameras on. I very much value seeing new smiling faces now more than ever. You're more than welcome to come off mute to comment or ask questions. The one thing I will tell you is I'll be putting myself on mute when I'm not actively speaking because I've got bulldogs sleeping under my desk. And in an effort to not contaminate the audio for other people, just make sure that if you're not actively speaking, you put yourself back on mute. You can still come off mute to comment and stuff, but just try and make sure that you're not letting the rest of us listen in on keyboard typing, that kind of thing. The other thing to tell you is I am open season. If you want to interrupt me when I'm talking, go right ahead because I get paid to fill the silence. But if our speaker, Barbara, or if any of our guests are like our other attendees are speaking, try not to crosstalk or talk over other people. Just use your best judgment. If you have any kind of privacy concerns, you will show up on our live recording, which we're streaming to our website right now. You will show up there if you come off mute to comment. So if you don't, for whatever reason, don't want to show up on our recording, that's fine. You can still participate though, and we highly encourage it. You can put any comments or questions that you have into the Zoom group chat. And if you have a question or comment that you want raised anonymously, that's good too. All you have to do is instead of sending it to everyone, you're going to pick my name, Meg, from the drop-down menu and send it to me instead. And I'll raise your question. I'll be monitoring that while Barbara's speaking and answering the rest of the questions that y'all have sent in prior to today's start. So last but not least, this is being recorded. So everybody that registered today, whether you join us for 5 minutes, whether you join us for the whole 60, you'll all get a link with, or you'll get an email with a link to rewatch this recording once we're done today. That link usually goes out within 2 business days. And that way you can share the link with other people. If you know somebody that would really benefit from what you're going to hear today, you can also review the recording so you don't have to feel like you have to take notes or ask us to repeat something if you missed what somebody said. You can always go back and review it later. And those videos are hosted on our website. They are always free to watch, and they're going to be there pretty much forever. So please feel free to send and share those around. You can also keep up with us on social, so feel free to take videos or pictures while we're going today if you want to. Share that you're spending your afternoon with Power to Fly. Our social media handle is @PowerToFly on basically every social media platform. And you can also subscribe to our YouTube channel where this video will end up eventually as well. So as we get started today, we have kind of corralled all of the questions that you guys all submitted prior to today's event. We've put them into more of a conversational format. And so if you don't see your question being asked or you are on the line and you have a question that's particularly important to you, please feel free to come off mute and ask it or put it in the Zoom group chat. And that way we make sure we get to that question. If I see that it's something we're going to touch on later, I'll hold that question until we get to kind of that area. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our guest speaker today. Her name is Barbara Jones. Barbara is a serial entrepreneur and is currently the founder and CEO of Lilly R&B, a leading IT consulting firm that helps Fortune 500 companies and government agencies increase their revenue while improving the retail experience. They provide world-class subject matter experts in the areas of POS, data analytics, fraud prevention, and IT staffing. So welcome, Barbara.
Thank you. Thank you. Hello, everyone.
Thank you so much for joining us today. So as we get going, we're going to start with our first question here. Oh, we got 2 pages, sorry, of questions. The first question that we have for you is, this person wrote in asking, how can I gain buy-in from my direct manager whose job would be affected by some of my new ideas?
Well, this one is a really great question, Meg, because this actually happened to my daughter who, like her mother, she was the only person of color at the company she worked with right after college. And so she, she was thinking the same thing. She asked me, Mom, how can I kind of, infuse some of, the things that I like in my culture into the company? And I told her, I said, who in the company do you feel is like your champion? Who do you feel like you can talk to about things before you bring it out to the rest of the company? And it was actually her manager. And so she sat down with her manager, and this was when some of the Black Lives Matter things were going on, and it was just getting really, racial tensions in the country were kind of at their highest. And so she talked to her manager about wanting to do something for Juneteenth. And those in Texas know what this is, but if you don't know, it's the Independence Day for, the slaves in Texas. They were actually independent on June 19th versus July 4th. And so she wanted to do something for June 19th that was more culturally aware for her. And she talked to her manager about it, and they agreed. And, had really, it's kind of like, the blinds are lifted off of the eyes when they realized, wait, she is the only, Black person that works at this company. And they were all for it. And they let her be in charge of it. She got to organize the whole event. And it turned out well. And it was a luncheon that they did. And they had everybody bring in lunch. And they got to talk about topics that were going on in our country. And people could be candid. And she said, Mom, it was really great. So now, when events are happening and different things are happening, people have that in mind. It's like, let's make sure everything is inclusive for everyone. And so that's the same advice I would give to this person is find that person who you feel is your champion in the company, who really believes in you and likes what you're doing, and start with them and just talk it out and kind of feel, ask, how can we get this out to everybody else in the company? Work for my daughter. I think it can work for them as well.
That's an excellent way to do it, especially if you're coming to them with an idea that is particularly close to your own heart. It's really a lot easier to speak with that level of sincerity and maybe try and make someone understand why this would be a good idea.
Exactly.
And I think your daughter's tactic was really, really dead on, because she's kind of introducing something that's not really a big lift on the company, but can be really, have a very large payoff for the company culture.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. So this next person wrote in saying, what do you wish you could tell your coworkers about being the only one?
This one was a really good question. When I read it, it just made me chuckle because I've actually mentored younger people who are kind of getting into this now. Just to tout my age, I actually graduated from college back in 1998. And when I was recruited into the company that I used to work for called in Austin, Texas, back in, I think it was 2000, I think it was the only Black woman developer in the company. And so I remember just thinking that same thing. It's like, wow, there's no other, there were some other women in the company. There were other women on the team, but no other Black women. And so I remember that, I kind of have that lonely feeling sometimes. And so I've mentored different people who are in that, that particular situation right now. And for some of them, it was kind of like, do I stay or do I leave? And I was like, no, definitely stay. But you have to talk to your coworkers and let people know how you feel. A lot of times they don't see that there's any type of issue with you being there. It's, they don't say, oh, it's just only one Black person that works here. Nobody's thinking, well, a lot of times they're not thinking like that. And so you have to be a little bit more vocal and just come to people and tell them how you're feeling, especially now, because people are having those conversations right now. It's coming up. I have people coming to me asking questions about how are you doing? How are you feeling right now with everything that's going on? So this is a perfect time to talk to your coworkers about how you feel being the only one, and you may be the only woman or the only, whatever in the company. This is a great time to talk to people about it. So water cooler, I remember those days of gathering around the water cooler or eating. Well, now since we're all on Zoom, it's much easier. We're on Zoom and we're on Slack, right? So you don't even have to look at them. You can talk to people via Slack if you're afraid to have that conversation with them, on camera. You can Slack people now. So now to me, it will be a little bit easier since we're virtual. But yeah, reach out to your coworkers and talk to people about how you're feeling and what you think would help you feel more included.
Yeah, absolutely. We have an anonymous question that came in the chat asking, how can we make an active effort to make the workplace more accommodating for the people who are the only ones? And I think you probably touched on that a little bit by just asking them, reaching out, seeing how are you doing?
Exactly. And it's, right now it's tensions. You don't know how people will react. And so sometimes you're a little afraid to say something. What if I say it the wrong way? Or they, if they feel that, I didn't approach them the right way. One funny thing with my daughter's situation is one of the people came and asked her, because they were trying to figure out what to bring to this potluck. And she wanted to bring red Kool-Aid. So there's any other Black people on the call, you're probably laughing right now. So, all Black people don't like red Kool-Aid. That's one of the stereotypes. And so she asked my daughter, said, should I bring red Kool-Aid? And my daughter was like, Mom, what should I say? She's asking me about red Kool-Aid. And so, I told her, I said, she probably doesn't know, and so just tell her, yeah, that's fine, but it's not like, that's what all Black people drink is red Kool-Aid. But it's a time to talk and to educate, but not feel, offended. Like, I can't believe she's asking me about red Kool-Aid. Let's not feel offended. Let's use that time to educate and talk it out. And so she did that. And she's like, oh, wow. Yeah, I didn't even know that. I was just trying to figure out like what to bring. And I Googled it. And this is what came up on her website. So she had gotten it from a website that said this was something you would bring to a Juneteenth party. So, people don't know. So until we start talking about it and having these conversations, how are you going to know? So you have to talk about it. So yeah, it's, talk to your coworkers, find those champions, the ones that you're already talking to anyway, or that you work maybe closely with, and start with them, and then figure out how to take it, to the broader team.
Absolutely. And I think it is important to call out here that if you are if you're part of the dominant group in whatever, company you work in, and you are trying to approach somebody who you think might feel like this, like might feel like they're the only or something,
right,
do so with tact and kindness first, and be ready to accept that if this person doesn't want to talk about it, they don't need to. It's not their job to teach you anything.
Right.
If you come with an honest and open question, hopefully that response will be positive, or at minimum it will be, I appreciate you asking, but I don't really want to talk about it. But be prepared that if you do get a negative response, that's okay. That's okay. Something you need to respect.
Right. And that was what I told my daughter, is if you talk to her and let her know how you feel, for her, it was an eye opener, because she didn't know. She didn't know any better at all. And so the fact that, she didn't, my daughter didn't take it the wrong way, and now I don't want to talk to her anymore because she said this, she didn't know. And so they talked it out, and it's like, it helped everybody. So, just be prepared for whatever the response is, and move forward. Don't use it as a way to hold a grudge, or I can't believe she said this to me. It's we're all learning. So to use it as a teaching moment and a learning moment.
Absolutely. All right. So this next question asks, what strategies have you used successfully to pull in non-POC leaders to advocate for you?
Okay. Yeah, for this particular question, I remembered one of my managers who I still talk to this day. I haven't worked for him in years. And he was the best manager, especially for things like this. And he, included everybody on the team, went out of his way to make sure that people on the team were included, sat down and talked with us he had an open door policy, for one thing. So anybody could come into his office, door was always open. You can talk to him about anything if you were having any troubles. That's the first thing. Second thing is he would do one-on-ones with us. I think it was either once a week or once every other week, just to kind of understand not only project-wide, but what else was going on with you in your life. And so that's one thing I would say to the non-people of color on the call, or if you're in the, not the majority group, is look at everybody on your team. Have that one-on-one conversation with everyone, and allow your team to feel that they can talk to you about anything. And so have that open door policy. I still remember him to this day. He was my manager. I think I was fresh out of college. And I still remember him. That was many years ago, many years ago, when I was fresh out of college. But I still remember him to this day, and I still talk to him. He's one of my Facebook friends. We haven't worked together in years, but still reach out to him for advice, is because he made everybody on the team, women, people of color, non-people of color. He made everybody on the team feel like they mattered, and what they were doing was beneficial to our team. And he definitely, stood up for us. If someone tried to come in and say anything wrong to someone on his team, forget about it. Because he protected us from things like that. So be that advocate for the people on your team and get to know them on a personal level, not just on what they're doing for you work-wise. Ask them about their family. And this is when things like this can come out. And that may be the champion for some of the other questions. That person may be the champion to bring some of your ideas for the other people on the team.
That is a really good point too, is if you're in a position of relative power or relative safety, I would say, like within your organization, do that, reach out to other people, make yourself known as an ally, make yourself known as somebody who will speak up for these other people. Because you might not know that like that person has no idea who might be safe to approach on their team.
Exactly.
So holding yourself out as like, because it doesn't cost you anything, you're not really taking a risk by saying this is something like that I'm open to these new suggestions, or I want to make sure that everybody's voice gets heard, or I want everyone to feel included. That's not a controversial statement.
Exactly.
And even just
easy to make.
Lydia's saying in the chat like that is a mark of great leadership, and it really is.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. So this next person's question said, how do you engage buy-in from those individuals on your team that are not entrepreneurs and or cannot relate to the method and the madness or that entrepreneurial spirit?
Yeah, I've always been entrepreneurial. And now since I've owned my own business since 2004, so I haven't worked for anyone since 2004. I'm unemployable at this point, so I can never get a job again. But what I tell people is those of us who are entrepreneurs and those of us who aren't, everybody is not an entrepreneur. So you're not going to make them come over to our method of the madness, right? They're going to do what they want to do. And if they like working for other people or being an employee, that's beautiful for them. But I guarantee you have other people on your team who are entrepreneurial like you are. That's your crew. So those are the people you kind of gravitate to. One of my companies that I started was actually from guys that worked with me at a particular company. We were all there as consultants, and we would meet after work and just talk about business ideas that we wanted to do. And we ended up forming a company together. Myself and these three other gentlemen that I work with, we started a company together because that's what we did after work. And we were consultants, so we were traveling. And so we were in the hotels together and things like that. And so we formed a company together and did some really good business for about 3 years. So, that's your crew. Join with the people that are entrepreneurial like you are, and the people that aren't, this is not something that they want to do. So we don't have to involve them with our method of the madness, but we do have the other people on the team who are. So that's your crew. Talk with them.
So just to play devil's advocate for a little bit, let's say that you are kind of the only entrepreneur, like horrible as it may seem, like if you are the lone reed and you are an island and that's it, are there any ways that you can not necessarily change your pitch, but highlight the aspects of what you're about to do or prove value in different ways that would resonate with somebody who doesn't maybe understand either like pulling a great idea out of kind of a mess or as they perceive it, or especially even when it comes to like risk? Because I feel like a lot of people that are entrepreneurial, not that they don't see risk, they perceive it differently than a lot of us that are like, but what if it goes wrong? What if this? What we've never tried it? So are there any things that tips that you use or avenues that you take to maybe reassure those people that are a little bit nervous or show them like what you're going to kind of pull together out of what they might perceive to be mess?
Yeah, that's a good point, Meg. And what I've seen just being owner of many startups is, and what's perceived by some of the big corporations that we work with, is startups are innovative. They're coming up with ideas nobody else ever thought of. So if you're that entrepreneur on the team, that's probably what you're doing, is you're coming up with out of the box things that nobody else is thinking of, or this very, like you said, high risk things that are not the normal of what the company is doing. And for a lot of big companies, that's what they're looking for, especially now. COVID-19 is a new normal. We can't think like we used to think years ago. Everything is changing and everything is new. So if you have those ideas, those entrepreneurial, innovative, risk-taking ideas, I think this is the time to definitely get your ideas out there And if your ideas are something that can help the company pivot or move into a direction that allows them to, especially if they're suffering due to some of the COVID-19 and you're coming up with these out of the box ideas that can move them into a new direction, I say go for it and put your ideas out there because they may be well received and it may be just what your company is looking for is somebody who is thinking out of the box. So that's the beauty of us as entrepreneurs is that, that's how we live every day. I have 10 business ideas every day and I'm like, I just can't work on anything else. I have to concentrate, but I'm always thinking of new ideas for businesses. And that's how entrepreneurs are. So use that innovation that you have and bring that to your team. You may save the company. You never know, or at least introduce a new revenue stream, which is what everybody's looking for right now.
Absolutely. It also looks like we have a follow-up question, if you don't mind taking a live question from the audience.
Go ahead.
Nicole?
Yes, thank you, Meg. Barbara, so, I told you the first time that I met you that I am so impressed and inspired by serial entrepreneurs because I don't know how you do it. And I think it is so cool. And just like building back to back visits, I think that is so cool and such a talent. Yes. And so, if you have advice for somebody who does have an idea, maybe they don't want to implement it in their workplace, but it's something separate, with your experience, what has been the most effective way that you've launched these ideas that you have had and these businesses that you've had?
Well, you have to be, sometimes you do have to be careful because you don't want to be perceived as working on your business ideas during work hours, right? Because they're not paying you to work on your ideas, they're paying you to work on their stuff. So you don't want to be perceived in that way. And you don't want, your management or your team thinking, oh, well, she's going to go do this and she's just going to leave. And then, all of this knowledge we've given her is gone. So those are two things I always thought in the back of my head where I had all these ideas for different businesses that I was always doing at night. Anyway, I was trying to think, how do I make sure that I'm not being perceived as doing my own thing on company hours? So I'm one of those type A personalities that I write down everything I do and when I'm doing it. So I keep track. It's like kind of a journal of what I'm working on, to spend this many hours on this activity, hours on that. And I'm a consultant, so you have to keep track of your hours. So I'm very accountable of what I'm working on. If I'm working on things that, for the company and it's 10 o'clock at night, I make sure I send an email to my manager that says, oh yeah, I'm just finishing up some work. Here's my status. So they can see, wow, she's up at 10 o'clock working on stuff for us. So they know she's working. Okay, so there's no question that I'm not doing at least my 8 hours a day. But, there's nothing outside of your normal work hours that your managers or anybody can tell you what to do outside of those hours. So then you can do your other things. But what I've done especially with the first company I was telling you guys about, I don't know if I mentioned that, but the first company I worked for fresh out of college was called 360 Commerce in Austin, Texas. And this company was acquired by Oracle Corporation. And the software that we created was a point of sale software that Oracle ended up selling all around the world for, I'm sure, billions of dollars. So this is the startup that I came out of. And while I was at this startup, I was watching everything because I was like, wow, I saw the customers we were bringing in. I saw the technology we were building. This was cutting edge stuff. And I was on the product team and also worked on the services team, which meant I was working directly with clients and I was also creating the product. And so I was watching all this. I was like, man, this is great. And so I remember that as the company started growing, they were giving us equity in lieu of raises because they couldn't afford raises, but they could afford to give equity. And I had a few of my friends who were, in the company. They were like, no, I don't want equity. I want a raise. I want my money. And I was like, give me equity. I don't care about the raises. Give me the equity, because I was thinking this company is going to get bought, and those options are going to be worth some serious money. So things like that. So I was always, while I was on the product team, I was coming up with ideas for different things we could add into the product and telling that to my manager, and they loved it. At one point, they actually took me off the product team and put me on the sales team, and I was doing all of the demoware for the sales guys. This was things that we didn't even have in a product. I would mock it up real quick, get it in front of the sales team. They would sell it as if we had it. Then we take it back to the product team and build it once it was sold. So at least from my environment, working with a startup, being entrepreneurial was a plus. They loved it. I mean, we were always coming up with new ideas. You could pitch them, put new features into the product. So for me, it was a beautiful playground to be a budding entrepreneur. And after that company was acquired by Oracle, that I took those options and the money that I got from there, and that's how I started my business and haven't worked for, another company since. So that's what I would say for the entrepreneurs is those ideas are going to come out of you. Just make sure you're accountable for what you're supposed to be doing. You can at least prove that you're not doing your stuff on company hours, but put those ideas out there and see if you can get some equity out of it. See if you give a good feature, will your company give you some equity for those ideas you're coming up with? But definitely get them out and share them with the company.
I love that you mentioned about the equity in the companies and stuff, because I read this thing. I don't know if it's true or not, right? Because I read it on Twitter, but somebody put on Twitter that when Beyonce was asked to perform at the Super Bowl,
yes,
they wanted to pay her, but she actually asked for equity in Lyft or Uber, one of those. And I was like, well, that's so genius. If I ever become that important one, not Beyonce level, right? But if I ever become important enough, I think that's the move I'm going to make, asking for equity. So thank you for that.
I was not important, Nicole. I was just one of the developers in the company. And so, but I saw the value of equity back then. And this is when I was young. This is fresh out of college days. So back then I just knew, and I believed in what we were building. I knew we were going to get bought. I knew somebody's going to buy this company. And so to me, that equity was way more valuable than a 2% raise. It's not like they were giving us much. So I took the equity, and they gave us, a lot of equity because, no one wanted the equity, but I volunteered for equity. Give me the equity, and it paid off. And that's how I was able to launch my company.
Well, thank you for sharing that. That's honestly fascinating. And I can absolutely totally see you in a sales role. Now you'd be wasted in a sales role because your entrepreneurial spirit absolutely shines through. But I can completely see why they were like, oh, we need her on the sales team.
Exactly. Demoware. I was the demoware queen.
Absolutely. All right. So let's go to one of our next questions. Okay. This person asked, once you've gotten the buy-in for your idea, how do you begin the process of creating a strategy to achieve it? Especially if you don't have a senior role in the organization, this stuff can be a big hurdle to even the best goals.
Exactly. So what I would say, and I've been in this position many times, and what I would say is, some of my ideas are these lofty, huge ideas, and you can't throw all of that at once. You have to have a roadmap in your mind. I'm going to start here and I'm going to work up to this grand idea that I really have. But start with something small, but have, in the back of your mind, the roadmap. You may not want to share everything because some people, they get intimidated, especially if you're coming up with ideas that are really lofty and these huge ideas that you can kind of see, we can definitely get here, but other people may not be with you. So you may not want to share the whole roadmap yet, but start with something small that you can own first. So that buy-in, when my daughter went to her manager and came up with these ideas, guess who got put in charge of coming up with this, with the Juneteenth celebration? She did. So, start with something small that you're probably going to be the one to own it initially, that you can start running with. What I've seen work in some of the big corporations that I've worked for, once they started getting some of their D&I, diversity and inclusion practices in place, is they started with, they would have, they would form groups within the company for the diverse group. So they would have the women, or they may have people of color. So they had these different groups, and they would allow them to take time to go spend in these different groups. So they could have time to kind of network with each other. These are huge companies. So it may not be, you may be the only woman on your team, but there's other women in the company. They would bring all the women together, and they would sponsor maybe a lunch for them all to go out to lunch together and get to talk, and they can, come up with different ideas. So you may want to put something like that together where we can form groups with the whole email distribution list, and we can, the company will allow us to, maybe go out for a lunch that's company sponsored. That's an easy one to start with. And then it gets bigger from there, right? Because then once you start forming these little groups, then you can do cross promotion. So I want to kind of come join your team, or we want to recruit more diverse people onto our team. So we have women throughout the organization that can kind of help with that and get people moved over to the team. So it can start getting bigger and bigger. So one of the big companies I was working for, what they ended up doing is they had They had like these different groups would have a day each year. And that day, the whole company would celebrate that particular group. And so it would be all kinds of events. They had stuff going on at the cafeteria. It was company wide, the flyers all over the building celebrating that particular group in the company. So that was, that took some time before they got to that space, but that was one of the things they evolved into. So kind of have a roadmap for some of your ideas, but start with the small one because you're probably going to be the one to own it, once you present it out there.
That's a really good point too, is that you kind of don't want to bite off more than you can chew.
Exactly.
Now, let's say you have an idea that really can't be dumbed down, because I actually was considering this when you were talking about that gaining buy-in idea.
Mm-hmm.
Should you be ready to either compromise or scale back your idea? Or does that kind of fly in the face of that entrepreneurial spirit? Is that one of those, like, you tell somebody to just calm down a little bit and they're like, no, but I can't because I'm just so excited?
No, I mean, you definitely will have to scale it back, right? So you have to start somewhere. You're not going to get your total idea. Well, you may, it just depends on the company culture, but you may not get your total idea initially. So you start somewhere, something that you feel will make a difference. And if I can get some success with this small venture, what else, then they're going to allow you to do more and more stuff as you have some success. But start with something that you feel you can be successful at, because what you don't want to do is come up with these ideas and it fails. So then that's enough ammunition for some people to say, see, that's why I told you we don't want to, work with or do this, is because, they can't handle the work. And so you don't want to do something that you're going to end up failing at, or it's going to be a failure. So start with something you feel like you can, if you have to own it, you can run with it, it can be successful so that you're able to build on it and do even more things in the future. So definitely scale it back. I would say scale it back.
Yeah. So let's say you do the scale back, and, well, honestly, either way, even if you do kind of shoot for the stars, if something that you try to champion does not go the way you think it's going to, or it just doesn't go. I mean, I'm honestly thinking of some of the initiatives I've tried to put through in the last couple of months.
Yeah.
And sometimes it can be completely outside your control, or maybe, like you said, you bit off more than you could chew. But what does that pivot look like? When you've put your heart and soul into something, or you've kind of leveraged maybe not your reputation, but you've asked for a shot, someone gave it to you and it didn't really pan out. What does the aftermath of that look like? Like, how can you, as somebody that's trying to get this buy-in and took a risk to get it, how do you kind of regroup, recover, not let it eat away at you, and still maintain that spirit?
Well, you have the key words, Meg. You have to regroup and you have to recover. If you say, okay, I failed, I'm not going to introduce any more ideas because they're never going to let me do anything else, then, it was a failure at that point, because you're right, they're not going to let you do anything else. So, I've done things where, it definitely did not work out the way I thought it was going to work out. And I was off to the next idea and brought it up to the same people, and they allowed me to do it again, because your people reward, a lot of people reward the people that are willing to do something, are willing to do something. And you're not going to win at everything. And that's even in your normal job outside of what you're trying to introduce for the diversity and inclusion part. Even with some of your normal tasks, you may not finish them correctly, or you may have been delayed, or it may have been over budget, whatever. So you're filling out some of that stuff as well. So do you quit your job and sit at your desk all day and not talk to anybody because your project didn't go well? You don't do it then. Why would you do it for this type of initiative? So you keep putting it out there. You keep bringing it up. After that first failure, they may be a little more hesitant. But if you have people, like I said, if you're starting kind of with that champion, I think you will still get a chance to do it again. Maybe not, for some cultures, it may not be right away, but I would still go after it and keep bringing up more of my ideas. Especially if you're a valued member of that team, then you will be able to do more things. You have to keep at it. You don't give up just because you failed at one thing. We all fail, and those failures help us get better with the next activity.
Is it helpful at all to kind of do, for lack of a better term, kind of a post-mortem of the idea and see like maybe where you went wrong, so that way you can address that with people that might kind of raise that issue later? Like, well, we tried this plan and it wasn't a great success.
Exactly. We do that with our projects, right? Well, most of the projects that I'm on, whether they're successful or not, we do a post-mortem. Here's what worked, here's what didn't, this is what we're going to do better. So it's the same thing with this idea. So, you have to keep moving forward and you have to keep putting your ideas out there, and you don't stop just because maybe it didn't work out. You do your postmortem, correct it, and move on to the next idea.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
And thank you for fielding some of these questions that are coming up, you know, kind of organically in the chat. I know it can seem really kind of daunting for people to be guest speakers, especially even when you have the questions ahead of time, but it takes somebody real special to be able to take these questions kind of off the fly and be like, oh yeah, and here's how it works into the rest of what I'm saying.
Well, Meg, when I'm not talking to you ladies, I'm trying to, or guys, I'm sure there's some fellas on the call too, but I'm pitching to investors. And so they're throwing questions at me that, you know, I'm coming up with stuff like this. So that part doesn't bother me with questions off the fly, because I'm having to pitch my business all the time to investors. So that's why for me, it's secondhand. It doesn't bother me at all. Ask away if you have questions.
Excellent, thank you. All right. So this question I thought was particularly interesting. Now it can be obviously very like subjective and depend on the situation, but how do you answer the question of the value add you're bringing to the table with whatever this idea is?
Okay, and this is a very interesting question, because I've been in certain situations, and I won't name the companies, but I've been in situations where I've sat down with people in the supplier diversity portion of the company. So, you know, to me, that's your job, is to bring in diverse suppliers, and, you know, that's kind of the role. And I've been told, well, you know, I can't work with you because, you know, people are going to think I'm only bringing you in because you're a Black-owned business. I was like, seriously, this is from, you know, a person of color. So I could not believe that I was hearing this. I'm like, well, I thought that was the whole job title, is you're supposed to want to work with us because we're diverse. And so it's this value add thing. You know, am I bringing you in, and, you know, you're not the best person to do the job, and I'm just bringing you in because of this. And so now people are going to look at me, and what is the value that I'm adding? This comes up all the time, right? And so what I try to tell the people that I mentor, especially with this value add, is that, you know, especially in the early days for me, when I was the only Black woman developer on the team, it was kind of this stigma. You know, when I first joined the team, people kind of looked at me like, you know, how did she get in here? You know, so it's kind of, they were thinking that, you know, am I just part of the, you know, the quota they're trying to meet? Does she really know what she was doing? And so very early on, I always wanted to be, you know, the smartest one in the room. I would stay up late at night and make sure I was prepared for meetings the next day. I would stay late at night coding to make sure that my features were done and ready for the demo the next day. So I did extra stuff because I knew people were kind of looking at me with that side eye, like, you know, how did she get here? Why is she on the team? And so I always wanted to feel like I was the smartest one on the team, you know, got the work done the fastest, knew all the answers if anybody had questions. So I did that extra work. But I've talked to people who are like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to have to represent all women or all Black people just because I'm the only one on the team. That's too much pressure. I'm not willing to do that. And so, you know, what I say now is that, you know, your value add to the company is the fact that, you know, and these are studies done by Babson College. I think Harvard did a study on this, is diverse teams produce better products. Think about AI. Think about the first Siri that you know, did not understand, you know, dialects from other ethnicities. Or it couldn't recognize faces of Black people. Think about all of this. Had there been Black AI technicians on that team, do you think that would have happened? No. And so products that are created that have a diverse group of people working on those products sell more people adapt to them, it's more revenue for the company. These are actual studies that have been done, and it's proven to be true. So your value add is bringing new ideas, different ideas, your culture, your understanding, your experiences onto that team. It doesn't have to be that you have to be the best person on the team because you're the only woman or you're the only person of color. You know, if that's what you strive to do, like me, just one of those type of personalities, that's fine. But don't feel like you have to do that. You being on that team and making that team diverse is also value add, but you have to do your work. You know, you can't be the one on the team not getting anything done either. So you have to do your work, but don't feel like you have to be the best person on the team because you're the only diverse person on the team. That was thinking I had in the past, but I see now that is wrong. And you have to, you know, bring your value, get your work done, but you don't have to be the best person on the team.
Well, and I feel like, granted, I mean, geez, I'm 34 now. I think I was over 30 by the time I worked closely enough with a person who explained to me the idea of the black tax. And I was like kind of flabbergasted by it. But then I realized, no, it's pretty understandable, like horrible, but I understand where people come from with it because I had felt it a lot of times when I was the only woman in a particular field or the only woman in the office or, the only woman on the production floor.
Right.
And so it's one of those things that is very hard to fight against because you want people to take you seriously, but it's very easy to feel like just showing up and doing your job isn't really accomplishing it.
Exactly. Yeah. And that, to me, I think it's starting to change now, but very early on in my career, that's exactly it, Meg. I could do exactly what everybody else did, and I was still looked at like, what is she doing? So I had to do more in order to get, that stigma taken off of me. And then at some one point, I was the go-to person for the team. Everybody was coming to me with questions about everything. I was like the best. I was, one of the best developers on the team. And that's pressure. That's how much pressure is that? So, you shouldn't ask, you shouldn't have to be in that role. And so for me, back when I was young, that was just my type A personality. So I kind of loved it a little bit, just all the guys coming to me asking questions. I love that. But what I tell the people that I mentor now is definitely you have to do your job. Definitely know that you bringing that diversity to the team is a value add, but don't feel like you have to be, the best person on the team just because you're the only woman or the only person of color. Do your job and do your job well, but you're adding value because you are diverse and you're bringing other ideas to the team that they wouldn't have without you. So that's your value add also.
That is a very good point. And honestly, even if your value add, like you said, if you were the only Black woman on the team or you were the only Black woman in the company, when there's more people coming to the table and you're no longer the only, that doesn't mean that your value add goes away.
Exactly.
Having that experience, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but like having that experience gives you that mindset of thinking of other people and really questioning, okay, who isn't represented in this room right now?
Right.
It doesn't have to be me. It doesn't have to be a group I identify with or that I even know anything about. But as long as you're asking those questions, then you're helping to develop better products, better services for the people that are going to use them.
Yeah, and some of us, people of color, you get caught up in it. I'm the first Black person that did this, or I'm the first woman that was on this team. And you kind of, you're walking with your chest out in that role. And to me, that's like, okay, you were the first, but don't be the only. It's now your job to make sure that others come on board. And that's the thing, you can kind of get caught into that trap of, I'm the first and I'm the only. That's to me, that's not a badge of honor. That's like, okay, I'm the first and the only, but that's going to change because now I'm here. So we're going to see more diverse people come to this team. This team is going to be more diverse because I now joined it. Don't always stay in that ground where I'm the only and I'm the first. Bring other people along with you that look like you and that are other diversity, other people of color, other, LGBTQ. Bring other people on the team so we have a very diverse team. It's not just a team with just Black people on there either. That's not diverse. So you bring a team with all kinds of people. Well, my company now, Lily R&B, that's one thing that I'm so proud of is we have a very diverse team. We have everybody represented on our team. And so we're small, but we're one of the most sought after consulting firms right now for point of sale. And it's because we have all kinds of talent on the team and our team works very well together. Very diverse group of people, so it can be done. And we all get along great. And there hasn't been any issues on our team. So diversity on the team works. And you can build that if that's one of your goals to build.
That's a really good point you made. I just want to call that out in case anybody wasn't really paying attention or maybe didn't quite catch it. Mm-hmm. Is that like, I've obviously also been watching way too much Disney Plus lately because I kept thinking back to like Pirates of the Caribbean. But if you focus on the fact that you are the first and the only, and you're not also lifting up either other people like you or other people who are not yet represented, by and by, you're the only one. And then you're the last one. And then it becomes this whole new ceiling that kind of glazes over and has to be rebroken again by somebody else. Yeah. So I think that's a really important thing to remember is that you don't, it's great to be the first, and there's nothing wrong with taking pride in that, but it shouldn't be the finish
Shouldn't
line.
be
That
black.
should be,
Exactly.
yeah. You should see that as like, oh, great. Now, what else can I change?
Yes. How is this team going to change because I'm here now? Not don't revel in the fact I'm the only one on the team. No, bring more diversity onto the team.
Yes. All right. So this person asked a question that's kind of in the same line, right? So how do you balance the pressure to be a model minority with the fact that you're a person subject to bad days, mistakes, bad moods, etc., just like anyone else?
Yes,
And I think you made a good point in this.
Yeah, I love this question. When I read this, it was just, I was remembering so many instances where that's how I felt. It's like, man, if I mess up, they're not going to hire any more Black women in this position. Or if I mess up, they're not hire any more women. And so that's too much pressure for anybody, right? You can't be the model, the token. I think they used to call it token person back in the day. You can't, who can walk into that? I've had several people that I've mentored who actually left the company because that's how they felt. It's like, it was just too much pressure. I had to be perfect. I had to be the best one at this. I don't want to do this. I'm going to go to a company where I can feel included. And they left the company. And so what I tell people is, you don't have to be that model minority. You're going to have your days. You're going to make mistakes. You may show up, with your hair all over the place. That may scare some folks, but, you still have to be authentically you, right? And so, and it doesn't have to be this model person. So you can make mistakes and you can, be who you are. But, that's the company you're working for shouldn't see that as, oh, wow, all these type of people are like her. That's the stereotype. So, what is one of the, I can't remember the phrase now, but, unbiased, what is it called? Help me with it, Meg. Unbiased, I can't remember the term for it. Unconscious
bias.
Yes.
Yeah.
So some people don't even realize what they're doing. And this is the type of stuff if you are the first person on the team, you have to call that out. You're going to have bad days, but that doesn't mean, you're having a bad day because you're the Black person on the team or the woman on the team. But you're going to have bad days because you just had a bad day. You call that out if you feel like, okay, I'm now being stereotyped because I'm a woman. We had one of my good friends, I think she spoke on Chat to Learn as well. She was pregnant and, was getting all kinds of flack because she couldn't do things because she was pregnant. I mean, seriously, like that, all these expectations were on her and she was carrying a baby. That's part of how we are as women in the workplace is we may end up, we may get pregnant. And so, there are things we're not going to be able to do because we're carrying a child. And so you have to take that into account when you're hiring women. Certain things you have to take into account. So being that model minority, I felt like that. I know people were in that position. I know people who couldn't take it and left, but I would say don't leave. Don't leave because stay there and diversify that team. Bring more people of color onto the team. Even if you're not in the hiring, you're not the one making the hiring decision. You might be the one that interviews diverse people or recommend people to come in. That's one thing I tell my team is if you know someone who you think will be a good fit for our team, then recommend them. Send me that recommendation. So if you're that minority or that diverse person on the team, recommend some folks to come join the team from the community that you know. A lot of times we've heard from companies that they don't know where to go. That's what they say. I think if you really want to, you can do it. But you've heard people say, well, I can't find any diverse people to come work for me. Well, ask the diverse people who are already working for you. I'm sure they have people in their network who can come. So bring, nominate or give resumes of people that that can now come and work for the company. But we can't live under the pressure of being the model minority. You have to be yourself. You're going to make mistakes. That's just everybody. You're a human being. So don't live under this that I have to be perfect because I'm the only diverse person on the team. That stereotype has to go away. And whoever you're working for should be able to see that you're having a bad day, not the whole group that you represent is having a bad day.
Thank you. Thank you for calling that out.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like Nicole has another question.
Go ahead, Nicole.
I'm a question master. That's what they like to call me. But So, talking about this, I think this is so important, right? And I think one of the things that you mentioned here is being intentional. And
Mhm.
it's so true that really trying to make waves in diversity requires being intentional, right? Because otherwise you get stuck in this circle of what you're already doing. And if you're not intentionally and actively trying to make changes, you really can't. And so I wanted to ask you, being a minority woman in the space of startups and entrepreneurs and really launching a lot of these companies and these organizations, how have you found it to be influential with the men you're working with? Because I mean, the space is really dominated by white men at right
Yeah.
now, unfortunately. So how have you been able to try and influence if it comes to like maternity leave,
Right.
beyond creating diverse teams?
Right. And you bring up a great point, Nicole. So my business is retail technology. Most of my clients, the companies are owned by white males. And so I remember I wish I had a picture of it. It was one situation where I had gone to one of our client sites and ended up taking the whole team, including the client's team, out to lunch. And so I was at this table, all white males. I think one other black person was there. He would work for me. So other than that, it was all white males at the table. I'm sitting at the head of the table. And when the guy comes with the check, guess who got the check? So this was one of those moments where I'm the only woman. And I think I was I was the only woman at the table, only black woman at the table, and all these white males, and we're all sitting having our lunch. And the waiter comes and they give the check to me, and I was like, "Wow, who would have thought this would happen?" Right? And so, I've been in that situation where, that's who my customer are white males. And a lot of times, I've talked to them, especially it was one situation, another funny story, one situation when I was working on a project and I was the only girl on the team, only woman on the team. And all the guys we had just finished a real big project and everybody was going out to celebrate. And so they were trying to figure out where they're going to go. And they were all talking. And I was sitting at the desk and I was working. I was kind of listening. I'm like, oh, wow, we're going to go and do some things. And then they all figured out where they were going to go and they all left. And I was the only one left. And I was like, where did everybody go? They didn't even ask me if I wanted to come. And so I was like, well, we just worked on this big project. It was successful. The client was happy and we were all going to celebrate. And they left me. And so I ended up just working late that night and going back to the hotel. And the next day I told them, I said, you guys left me. They were like, oh, you want to go? We were going to, I think they were going to probably like a strip club or something. So they figured she doesn't want to go. So I'm like, it doesn't matter where you guys were going. The fact that you didn't even ask me when we worked on this project for months together, no one even thought to say, what about Barbara? And they were like, I mean, you should see the faces. These are guys I work with every day. It's not like they, are thinking in the back of their mind, we don't want, she's a black girl, we don't want to deal with her. These were my friends. We worked together every day. We were all close. We were in the trenches getting this project done. So that was not in their mind. They were just thinking, oh, she probably doesn't want to go because we're going to go do guy stuff. She doesn't want to go. They never thought this. You're not including her. You didn't even think to ask her after we did all this work together. And so from that point on, anytime they were going, even if they were going to the strip club, Barbara, you gonna go? They made sure that they asked because I went in, I told them, you guys made me feel like totally left out. We worked on this thing together. You all left me. Nobody even asked me. I was sitting in the office alone and they didn't even realize it. I mean, seriously, it's not like, they just lied to me. They didn't realize it. And from that point on, I was always included. Even most of the time, I don't want to go with them where they were going, but they still asked. And so, Nicole, what I would say is you have to say something. You can't sit on the team and, just be, especially with us women, sometimes we don't want to say anything. We don't want to make waves. We don't want to be looked at as the B word or whatever, or she's nagging and all this type of stuff. So we just kind of quiet and we may not speak up when we need to, but you have to. And when something like that happens, you have to speak up and say something. And at least with my situation, it was a turnaround because they realized now whenever they plan stuff, they would at least plan something that we all could do. That they knew, oh, Barbara would like to do this too. They would at least some of the events would be, everybody's gonna go and Barbara, we're gonna do something Barbara likes too. So they were very intentional after that point. Then when they saw how hurt I was, that they just excluded me, I was always included. Had I not said anything, it would have went on and nobody would have ever noticed. So we have to speak up. We have to talk about it. And a lot of times you'll be surprised at the reaction you get. They didn't even think about it. It's that unconscious bias. You don't even know what you're doing until somebody brings it to you. And then you're like, oh, wow, you're right. We did not include you. So that's what's worked for me in the past is I just learned to be more vocal and just trust the team and not see them as them versus me. It's like we're all together, but to make sure that they know how I'm feeling. And the same thing, they'll tell me how they're feeling as well.
That's a really good point to make, actually, because I think you're right. There's a lot of this either, people feeling left out or even, like the kind of discrimination that happens. I feel like a lot of the times it feels unconscious, and it's not really something that people are doing on purpose. They just, people get in their own bubble and you forget that like your world is not the world, right? And so you're right. If you speak up, then they're aware of it and they have that choice of if they're going to be nice and include you and realize that they messed up or that this was something that they should have remembered to do, or they're going to double down and be jerks, at which point at least you know where you stand. But then you have started, you haven't come out guns blazing. You've said, well, what about me? And then they have to think about it a little bit because I honestly I fell prey to this a lot. Right after high school, I was doing some volunteering work and I worked with this group called the Ability Center of Greater Toledo. And I had never really realized how much of the world isn't really set up for people in wheelchairs, isn't really set up for people that use walkers to get around. Exactly. So we talk about a lot of, diversity and equity and inclusion, and we think about visible diversity, usually in terms of skin color, socioeconomic status, education levels, that kind of thing. But physical diversity is just as important. Neurodiversity and diversity of thought and experiences. Somebody that was raised in a foster care environment is going to have a completely different outlook on something like a potluck where you bring a family recipe than somebody who grew up knowing their family and, going to family picnics and that kind of thing. So it's one of those things that you don't know what you don't know until you ask, and nobody is going to know that something's wrong unless you say so.
And we all have it, Meg. So we all have, unconscious bias. I remember being, when I was married, there were people on the team who were single. And, when there was weekend work, I was like, well, let the single people do it because they don't have any children to go home. I got to go home to my kids. And the single people were, they were like, why should I have to work weekends just because I'm single? So even that type of thing, that's that unconscious bias. I'm thinking, well, they're single. They don't have lives. They can just be at work all day. And they're like, no, we have lives too. And I don't want to work every weekend just so all the married people can, go home and be with the kids. And then there's other single people that would volunteer to do it because they felt like, okay, I don't have anything to do and I don't have kids to go home to. But there was at least, it wasn't, they were given that option. And we all looked at that together and decided, at that time as a team, who should be able to do that. And so when you have that type of dynamic on the team where everybody's kind of, it's one team and not us versus them, then conversations like that can happen. And we take everybody into account. And so we all have unconscious bias. So, until somebody speaks up against it, you never know. You may not even know.
Barbara, thank you so much. These always go so quickly, but truly, this has been a joy to talk to you today.
Yes, thank you.
Before we wrap up, is there anything that you want to leave our audience with? Anything that maybe you didn't get to touch on in our questions? Anything at all?
Well, I hope, the whole point of doing this call, and when I was talking to Power to Fly about what topic, I had so many topics, but this one really resonated with me because I've had, especially now 20 years into this, when I started tech, it was back in 2000. And so, just imagine back then, if it's still going on now, imagine what it was like back then. And so, I've done this for 20 years. And I think one of the questions we didn't get to is I've been in a position where being the only Black person or Black woman really helped me because I was the center of attention. Everybody knew me. It was like, I stuck out like a sore thumb. And so people wanted to know, who is she? And so that helped me with a lot of my business opportunities. I walk in the door and it's like, oh, wow, she's a Black woman. And so, sometimes it helped me. And I've been doing this for the last 20 years. But what I've noticed lately, and the people I've talked to lately, is that things have really changed from, companies that have this diverse culture being sought after. You know, a lot of the millennials and the ones coming after them, they're looking for companies that are diverse. That's where they want to work. So if you want to get some of the top talent, you have to diversify your team because that's where they want to work. They don't want to work in teams that are so siloed for one type of thing and one mindset. So this is an important topic because if you look around and your team is not diverse, have the conversation and change it. And just know as you bring in these people in, kind of hear what you know I've said on this and some of these questions that people are going through is real. It's how people feel when they're the only one. So when you start to diversify your team, keep this type of thing in mind and make sure that it's very inclusive, you're intentional. Everybody knows what this mission is. We're making our company diverse because it's going to help our company. It's going to attract the right talent to come work for us. This is something we're all doing together, and we're all going to get buy-in for it. And when our diverse team is starting to get formed, we're gonna accept these people with open arms. And so that's something for, I don't know the type of people we have on the call, but if you're in the diverse group or not, this is something we all have to do together. And hopefully this talk will allow those conversations to happen at your company, and what can you guys do and start talking about based on what you've learned here today. So that's my goal and my dream, is that this will increase more conversations in the companies and we start to diversify more of the companies that are not diverse right now.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming and spending your afternoon with us. Barbara was telling me before the call today, just to kind of toot her horn for her a little bit, that based on today's chat, she is actually going to be featured in a profile for, it's the alumni magazine for
University of Texas at Austin. Same type of topic. They did a whole interview of me, and so they're going to have the same type of topic now, which I think University of Texas, they probably have 2% or less Black students at the school. So for them, this is a big topic and they want to diversify the campus a lot more. So hopefully this will help them once they start getting more voices like mine out to recruit more diverse students. And so I'll be featured the same type of topic on the University of Texas website as well.
Awesome. Well, please be sure to share that link with us so that way we can help popularize that and push that around on our socials and stuff. Thank you so much for spending the afternoon with us and bringing your expertise, and as well as answering a lot of questions that require a little bit of vulnerability. So thank you so much for that.
No problem. Thank you for the opportunity, Power to Fly. I love your chat and learn session, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to be on one.
Absolutely. I want to say a thank you as well to our audience today. Thank you so much for the questions that you submitted prior to today's session and the questions you asked during the chat. They were wonderful. Thank you again so much for your participation. We do have another chat coming up here in just about an hour from now. We're going to talk about unstuffy PR for small business owners. So please feel free to check that out. I've also put links in the chat where you can connect with Barbara if you'd like. And if you have any further questions, you can also connect with us, hi@powertofly.com. I check that email inbox, so please feel free to reach out there, as well as a link to our upcoming virtual chats. You can also check out our summit that's happening next week, along with a virtual job fair on the 11th. So please, check those out, and hopefully I'll see many of you around here soon. So have a happy Wednesday, and talk to you guys later. Bye.